Welcome to the Scoop World Order. We got the offensive skill position preview. This is going to be inside stuff that we're hearing on guys. This is going to be how we project guys to go through camp, who could be the big risers, who could maybe fall down the depth chart. We're excited about this one. We've been doing a little pre-show action. Let's start with you, Nevada. We're going to start at the position everybody's curious about. We're going to start at quarterback. CJ Stroud seems like he's the guy, but what are you hearing and what are you projecting from the starter along with the two potential backups?
Well, it's been interesting because I think everybody, myself included, have kind of been penciling C.J. Stroud in, and I've got him as one of my, early Heisman favorites, just based upon, the potential success of Ohio State and him being the most likely starting quarterback. But I just keep hearing from inside of Ohio State to not, put him in there in Penn, because I think it's an open competition heading into the fall, and I know that Jack Miller and Cal McCord both. Let me put it this way: they both believe they'll be the starter when the ball's kicked off in September. So they are not coming into this September thinking at all that this is CJ's race to win and that they're only playing for the backup spot. They are thoroughly convinced that they're going to be the guy. And I thought, Miller really had shown some flashes through the spring. He's had an excellent summer. Cal McCord's been working out exceptionally hard. So, like I said, gun to my head, I'm going with C.J. Stroud, but I think it's going to be a lot closer battle than people think. And I think that's not a knock on C.J. at all. I think it's just a tribute to the depth of the room and the confidence and belief of the two guys, that are battling with him.
Where you stand with this, Bank?
Yeah, I think it's going to be C.J. Stroud. Possession is 90% of the law. And when Justin Fields went down against Clemson, at the point, that happened, Ohio State didn't know if he would ever play another down for them again, or he'd be back in one play. You didn't know. And they put C.J. Stroud in. So that told me all I needed to know there between him and Jack Miller. And then through the spring, everything I heard on C.J. Stroud was really good. I think Ryan Day and Corey Dennis and Kevin Wilson, I think they're definitely going to want it out there that it's an open competition. You do not want to transfer out of this room. So you're going to make it seem to everybody that it's open and everybody got a shot, and we love all of it. It's going to be C.J. Stroud. He's going to be the starter, and I think he's going to do really well. I am really high on C.J. Stroud. I know Quinn Ewers is, I think he's going to be everything he's cracked up to be, but I'm going to tell you, Kyle McCord is really good, and Kyle McCord is not going away, without a fight as we look down the road. But I think for the 2021 season, I think C.J. Stroud takes the first snap, and I think he'll take the last snap. I think it's going to be really good. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's hard to pick against CJ Stroud after the spring game and how well he did in the spring, but it was really weird because Jack Miller, he got the first drive and he started off like gangbusters, and then he threw a really bad pick, and it was like he never could recover. It's like, Bank, I always harp on guys that when they make a mistake, can they come back mentally?
Yeah.
And he threw that bad pick, and he just never, right to Ryan Watts, is bad throw. And I mean, he never recovered the rest of the game. He kind of went in the dumpster for the rest of the game. And I don't know. I think it's going to be real interesting. I think CJ Stroud obviously going to get the first snap of training camp, which will be interesting to watch. To me, the real battle is who's going to be the number two. Is it going to be Kyle or is it going to be Jack? And
right.
If Kyle's the number two, does Jack take off? Like, I mean, we've seen guys that get beat out in camp or they get replaced, like Kelly Bryant did at Clemson when Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he literally quit in the middle of the season and went to Missouri. So it's like the way I look at it with Quinn Ewers coming in next year, two of these guys aren't going to be here for 4 years. Like, they might graduate in 3 and be a grad transfer, but the way that the world is, and with transfers and with quarterbacks and the portal, like, these guys are too talented to sit there and watch. We always talk about Joe Burrow would be a PE teacher in Athens if he would have stayed Bobby Buckeye and held the clipboard and watched Haskins play and ran out the tunnel and waved. Like, he wouldn't be the number one pick, but he goes to LSU, dominates, has the greatest season ever, and he's the number one overall pick. So I just, these guys aren't all going to stay. I hope that they stay, but I know better. And it's going to be interesting to see who wins that backup job. Because we all pretty much think Stroud's going to take the first snap against Minnesota, but I don't know. That backup job is going to be really, really interesting. So from there, this position is going to be wild, running backs. So I'm going to start with you, Bank, this time. Master Teague's the incumbent, had a nice year last year, but it's weird. Like, a guy that put up those kind of statistics really left a lot to be desired in the eyes of the fan base and of our message and of the Scoop family. He's, for a guy that put up that many yards, I mean, people were not very satisfied with him. So tell me a little bit about your opinions on the running backs, and who do you think could be the lead dog if Teague isn't that guy?
Yeah. Well, with Master Teague, I was never high on him coming into Ohio State, and it seemed like everybody was, but me. And then his first year, he backed up, not his first year, but 2 years ago, he backed up J.K. Dobbins. He was one of the leading rushers in the Big Ten. And I thought, wow, I was wrong on this guy. He is pretty good. And then he had that dreaded Achilles injury. And Kirk, those, no one talks about Achilles. We always talk about ACLs, but people come back from ACLs better than they were before. Those Achilles are killers. We saw what it did with Tough Borland, who was a pretty good football player early in his career before the Achilles injury, and it just ruined him. Master Teague was not the same player last year he was the year before, and I think it's the Achilles injury. And we're going to see this year, with Cam Brown, how he comes back at the most premium position that you need, side-to-side movement and stop and go. So, but Teague, he's still there. They trust him. They can count on him, but he's not the most talented guy by far. TreVeyon Henderson it's going to be his job. And it's just a question of when. It's not if. He is going to be the lead dog, and he's going to be special. Is it the Minnesota game? Is it the Michigan game? Is it 2022? I don't know. But he's the most talented guy by far. Now, I was never a huge Mayan Williams fan. I saw him play in high school. He was overweight. He was slow. Good, hard guy. Well, what we saw in camp, about 2-3 weeks ago was stunning to me. To see Mayan at 222 pounds or whatever he is, I was in shock. Because I saw him in high school when they listed him at 235, and he was not 235. He was 245. And usually 245 in high school can translate to 260 in college, and then it's not good. He looked like, a Greek god, what we saw a couple of weeks ago in camp, and I was like blown away by what I saw. Crowley, another one I wasn't real super high on coming out of high school. Then he had the bad injury, and so we'll see about him. I don't think Evan Pryor's ready. I don't think he's going to be ready. But TreVeyon Henderson is the wild card. They started J.K. Dobbins, as a true freshman, and he didn't play his senior year of high school because of an injury. So, when is TreVeyon Henderson ready to take over that job? Because when he takes it over, he's not giving it back. And, I think TreVeyon Henderson could be a 3-and-out guy. It's just a question of, when does that clock start? So those are my thoughts on the running backs.
What about you, Nevada?
Yeah, no, I agree. You guys know I've been banging the drum about Mayan Williams and how excited I am about him, for this year. And I think he's gonna be terrific. And everything that Banks said about TreVeyon Henderson, I mean, he's everything and more. I mean, he's a guy that Ohio State could not be more excited about. And when you see this guy work out, it's, he's just got amazing feet. He's able to accelerate so quickly in and out of his cuts. He just leaves guys grasping for air. He's a threat to take it the whole way every time he touches the ball, which is something you really want. And, it's what you dream about in any offense, but certainly in an Ohio State offense. But I think the drama in the running back room this year is going to be, what do they do with Teague? What do they do? How does the coaching staff deal with a guy who's a spiritual leader, who's a mentor, who's a veteran, who's a guy that's been around, who's Banks said, who they trust, who's responsible with the ball, but he's just limited. He's limited in terms of his ability. He's a one-cut guy. I don't think he really operates as well in this offense, and Like, he certainly, we've seen the offense stall when he's gone in there, but they keep rolling him out there and they keep going back to him. And so for me, the story of the running back position is going to be how quickly can Ohio State muster up the courage to move away from Master Teague. And again, and I say that with, I hate bagging on kids. I'm pro kid. This is nothing, personal against them. I just think it's an observation of his skill set relative to the other kid's skill set in the room. I think there's just other guys that are better. And like I said, as a person, you won't find a better person than Teague. Just will not. Great kid, but I just think he's limited. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how quickly will Ohio State embrace Henderson, and how much of a chance will they give Mayan behind him, and how long of a rope will Teague have? I think it's going to be really, really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I agree, because he's a guy that potentially could be a captain this year, because we don't have a veteran quarterback, so he could I could project the captains out. I mean, obviously Thayer is a shoe-in, Olave is a shoe-in. Teague could be a shoe, and he's a redshirt junior, so he's basically like I know they all got this funky year because of COVID, but I mean, he could be potentially a captain. I mean, Rucker could probably be a captain. So I'm just looking at the seniors, but to me, like I just remember sitting at the spring game watching it live, and I just remember this Flare Fest, and I looked at my friend, I was like, "Who the hell's 28? Oh my god!" And I looked down, I was like, "That's Mayan Williams." I was like, I mean, he had this like burst and this smoothness, and I was like, "That's not Meatball. That can't be Meatball." I thought it was Trey Henderson, and I was like, "No way, that's Meatball." Then I looked down, and I was like, "Oh wow!" I was like, I never projected him to have that kind of speed and burst, and I was like, "Whoa, that was impressive." I just think the biggest thing is when you look at it, the teams that win the national championship, they have a first round caliber running back. I mean, just we've seen them. We've seen Najee Harris. We've seen Travis Etienne. When we won it, we had Zeke. It's just kind of what you need. You need that high end guy, and Trey Henderson's that guy. And it's the one thing that's real interesting is I think that he's got the speed, but I think he's a bigger threat in the passing game. He's a much bigger threat in the passing game than Master Teague is. I mean, they tried to, he had a few catches in the spring game, but I think that you could really feature him in the throw game, which is something that's really helpful. If they empty out the backfield and a guy can actually go get it, that's a big deal. And when you have a guy that's a breakaway threat like he is, it makes your offense so much easier to manage, because when you're an offensive lineman and you got a guy can go the distance, like when we had Beanie and he could go for 60, like that's like there's no better feeling in the world when you got a guy that if you crease him, I mean, he could take it to the house. And then it's like having a Ted Ginn, except it's at running back, where one play and you could be off the field and sitting on the bench and up by 7. So I agree with you on Trey Henderson. Again, it's hard when you're managing a guy who's been a good player. He's a good kid. He's not a great player. So that's like one of those things where, when you're a returning starter and he was productive last year, but there are a lot of times where he ran to darkness. And that was like probably the biggest issue a lot of people had with him, is that his vision is not what we would want it to be. And that could always improve, but the fluidity and the vision are the two things that are the big knocks on Master Teague. But, when you got a kid like Trey Henderson, I mean, you just got to let that kid get the ball and run and get into the rhythm. The hardest part of the running back is you got to get him into a rhythm. You can't just give him 2 carries and then yank him and then he goes stands there for 10 minutes. Like you got to give him, you let him get into the feel of the game. So we all agree with Trey Henderson. Bank, do you think Mayan Williams ends up being the number 2? Like, here's the question: give me your projected top 3 rushing leaders on the team.
I think what Nevada said, I think they really like Master Teague's leadership, mentorship, off-field qualities. And, he doesn't fumble the ball. I could see him being the quasi starter, so he trots out there in the first series and, maybe you give him the goal line carries because he's really good, inside the 5-yard line. He's not going to fumble the ball and he's going to power it. But then maybe, it looks better than it really is for him. So you don't embarrass the kid. He's still engaged. He's still your leader. But the bulk of the carries, once we get through that first series, the bulk of the carries go to, Mayan Williams. If Trey Henderson is not ready. But if Trey Henderson's ready, I think you see that slow, steady progression to where he takes over. But you still keep Master involved, but I think Master Teague he's not going to carry the ball 15, 20 times a game, I don't think. But I think he can get 5, 6, 7 carries. And then you see Henderson's ready. He gets a ton of them. If he's not ready, then you go to Mayan Williams. So we'll see. But I think you can keep Master Teague happy and keep him engaged and doing the things you need from him without giving him the ball 15, 20 times.
So who leads Ohio State in rushing this year? Give me a name.
Trey Henderson's ready to go. It's going to be him. And if not, then I think it'll probably be Mayan Williams.
You agree with that, Nevada?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me for a top 3, I'd say it's going to go Henderson, Williams, and then C.J. Stroud as your third leading rusher. And then I got Teague tucking in behind that.
Whew. I'm going to be the outlier. I'm going to say Teague, Henderson, and then Mayan Williams. Just because I don't know. Like for some reason, I feel like they're going to give him a bunch of carries, even though it doesn't look like he probably should. But for some reason, I can still see him getting 1,000 yards this year. All right, so we're going to go to maybe the most talented room in Ohio State history. I'm not even joking. This wide receivers room is something that's just out of this world good. We've got the X, and Garrett Wilson. We've got the Z and Olave. The slot guy is going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba and Emeka Ibuka. Nevada, just give me your take on this receiver room. How do you see it shaking out? I mean, obviously, you can write the X and the Z in ink. I mean, they're probably the 2 best receivers in the entire country. But how do you see the rotation shaping out? Who do you see as the emerging guys after Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave?
Well, it's been interesting because I've been really digging deep on this lately just to try to get a kind of a handle on this room because, like you said, it's a talented group. It might be the deepest group that we've ever had there. It might be the deepest group in OSU history. When Olave returned, which was kind of a pleasant shock, and it probably sent Jamison Williams out the door because nobody saw that coming. But the thing that I've been hearing, which has really been encouraging to me, has been I've been hearing really good things about Julian Fleming. And Julian Fleming's a little bit of a forgotten man with the entrance of Buckeye and Harrison Jr., who I think is a super freak. Julian Fleming was the number 1 wide receiver in the country, and had a little bit of an injury, kind of battled some things. Some people were concerned about whether or not he was going to be a portal candidate, and whether he's a portal candidate or whether he's a transfer candidate or whatever, he's buckled down right now, and he's focusing in. And the quarterback, you talk to the quarterbacks and ask them, who's looking good. His name's always coming up. So, you expect to hear the Olaves and the Wilsons and then Jigbas and stuff like that. But Julian Fleming's getting a lot of run right now. And, it's hard to say, your emerging player is the guy that was the number 1 wide receiver in the country, but that's my emerging player for the year is Julian Fleming. I think he's going to have a big year, and I think he's going to remind people why he was so highly regarded coming in.
Yeah, it's amazing that a guy that was the number 1 player in the country and 5 stars last year is like overlooked, but that's how deep this lineup is in this receiver room. Bank, who do you got? Who's your emerging guy after the big 2? Who's the guy that you got your eye on that thinks could be the big guy?
Yeah, I wish you would have called on me first there, because Nevada kind of stole it from me. The nice thing that I think the best thing about going to camp is the ability to talk to coaches and support staff and the quality control guys. Everybody's so relaxed, and it's a lot easier to talk to them than it is the night before the Michigan game. You're going to try to text someone and think they're going to answer you back. There's no way. But someone who knows the receivers really well and told me Julian Fleming is an absolute freak. And this is a person that doesn't use that word very often. Everybody's a freak anymore. Your 8th receiver is a freak. But, so I'm fully prepared. I'm all in on Julian Fleming. He just needs a shot. It's all, and that's so much a part of this, Kirk. And you knew that in your career. You just need a chance. and when you're behind Olave and Wilson, and we know what Smith Najigba can do, he just needs a shot, and I'm all in on Julian Fleming. I was told the same exact thing that Nevada said. I didn't know he was going to say that. He didn't know I was going to say that, but yeah, Julian Fleming is a guy that you're just hearing so much good stuff about. And, in that room, when you start ranking them, either Julian Fleming or Marvin Harrison or Jaden Ballard, one of those guys is going to be like the 6th or 7th receiver in that room, which is unbelievable. You know what I mean? You could literally trot out Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, and Julian Fleming and have the top wide receiver group in the Big Ten by far. And somebody in that group is going to be number 6 or number 7. So, super talented room. And yeah, I'm all in on Julian Fleming. I mean, I just want to see him get a shot and throw him the ball and let him do the things that, the things he can do. I mean, he's a big, fast leaper, and his time's coming. His time is coming, and Ohio State loves him. And Julian must love Ohio State, and he must really trust Hartline and Ryan Day, because Georgia would have promised him to be the number 1 guy this year. So, I'm all in on Julian Fleming.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to be the third guy to take Julian Fleming. I'm rooting for the kid just because he had a shoulder last year. It's not like Harry Miller. They both had labrums last year, and they both got them corrected with surgery. And I think they're both going to put out a lot better this year than they did last year. So I'm rooting for both of them. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, that's the funnest part about going to these camps, Bank. You're right. It's like we sit, like me and you, like literally, I talked to Kevin Wilson for 45 minutes. We talked to Hartline for 20 minutes. We talked to Parker Fleming. We talked to Kerry Combs. We talked to literally like the whole staff. I mean, Tony Alford, because they're all guys. They all know us. They all want our help, with recruiting or insight or anything. And they all treat us great. So it's like, I mean, why would we not say, hey, how's this like? How's this like? And, and they're all honest with us. They're all very forthright. And, I kept hearing, and it was funny because I met Jackson Smith at the end of the one day of camp when the South Florida Express was there. And he introduced himself. And he's like, my name's Jackson Smith. And I was like, who is Jackson Smith? He said, I'm like, oh, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Okay, cool. And I was like, hey, man, I think you're going to have a huge year. On the TV show, I nicknamed you the Ninja. And he started dying laughing. I was like, hey, man, with NIL, you can trademark that if you want to. I'll let you have it. And he was dying laughing. But I just think like we've got, a dominant, like 2 guys that could really dominate in the slot with Emeka Egbuka and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Emeka Egbuka had 8 catches in the spring game. And I mean, that's an 18-year-old kid that should be going to prom. And he looks like a college junior. I mean, he's ripped. Like it's like Brandon Ennis. Like we watched Brandon Ennis and he's like shredded, ripped. And I'm like, that guy does not look like he's 18 years old or whatever. And I think that both those slots, Egbuka, and it's funny, we leave out Marvin Harrison Jr., who might be the best one out of all of them, but that's how deep this room is. I think it's going to be wild. So here's the question. I'm gonna start with you, Banks. You get the first pick. Who's going to be number 3? And you can't say Rucker because we're going to start about Rucker tomorrow. Who's going to be number 3 on the team at wide receiver in receptions?
Well, I think it's going to be Jackson Smith Najigba, and I think he could end up being the best NFL player of the group. But I think with Olave and Wilson coming back, it's so tempting to throw the ball to them every time, because people kind of complained last year that, we don't throw to Jamison Williams, we're not throwing to Rucker, we don't throw to the back. Well, it's so tempting to throw it to Olave and Wilson like every time because they're open when they're covered. So I think Jackson Smith Najigba could be in pure talent. He could be the most talented guy. But I think they're going to throw it. I think Olave and Wilson will battle it out for the most catches. And I think Jackson will be 3rd, and his time will come, in 2022. So that's how I kind of see it shaking out there.
What about you, Nevada?
Yeah, this one's tough. I mean, this is really, really tough. And I mean, if I'm looking at 3rd, the thing that I just, I keep hearing that they're practicing more, 4 wide receiver sets. They're even going 5 wide, and I just I don't know how Marvin Harrison Jr. Isn't right up there. I mean, and he's always open. Have you seen this kid? You talk about kids that have the NFL body. He's a high school freshman, or excuse me, a college freshman that looks like a 10-year NFL veteran. I mean, he carries himself like an old soul. He's strong. He's tall. He's so polished. He's always open.
Well, did we
Nevada.
lose it there?
I think we lost Nevada. I think he was getting so excited about Marvin Harrison
He was
Jr.
on a
that
roll.
his
Yeah, he
phone
was on
cut
a roll.
off. Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with him. He'll ring back in here, but like I think Harrison, it's weird because his dad wasn't like a big physical
No.
guy. And then
No,
all of a sudden, like his son is like this freak. He's like Megatron. And I remember we were talking to a coach and he said we couldn't cover him all spring. And I mean, and they were throwing their best guys at him. Like we couldn't cover him. He gets open. And because it's weird because his dad was like a super technical route runner, little guy, had to get open, had to be a speed guy.
Yeah.
And his son is like a super technical giant. So, I don't know. Like for me,
it's like I said. I mean, if something went wrong and Ohio State had to start Harrison, Igbuka, and Julian Fleming, that would be the best wide receiver group in the Big Ten by far.
oh my God. Oh, I mean, how many of those guys would be the number one receiver at every other Big Ten school?
Sure.
Like
sure.
if you put Jackson Smith and Jigba in Michigan, he's their number one receiver. You put him on Michigan
Jaden
State,
Ballard,
Iowa.
Yeah, Jaden Ballard would start at Penn State or Michigan or Wisconsin. He'd start day one.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane. Well, we'll wrap this with just me and you. I think Nevada, he got so excited about Marvin Harrison.
Yeah,
he's short-circuited, but
he might have had a heart attack.
He might have had a heart attack.
I hope he's
it's
healthy.
I didn't even talk about like the coach that said we couldn't cover him all spring. He's like, no, really, we couldn't cover that kid. No matter what coverage we threw at him, he beat it. And I'm like, that's pretty scary for a freshman, an 18-year-old. But Bank, man, I appreciate you, brother. We'll do the O-line and the tight ends tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Then I think we're gonna do the front six. So that'll be the D-line plus the Mike and Will, and then we'll do the back five. So we'll run your 4-2-5 through our breakdowns. So yeah, I know I do too. I don't want no more 4-4, brother. So well, I appreciate you, my man. You have a great night. I'm gonna get this up now. Thank you, Scoop family. Click that subscribe button, give us a like, leave us some comments, and we will see you on the message board. See you, brother.
All right, bud.
See you, brother.